Robby, what's up, man?
Hey man, can you hear me?
I can hear you. You hear me all right?
Awesome. Yeah, yes, sir. I got you. Just making sure
Well,
I set it all up.
oh man, you're good. Thanks for coming on the podcast for taking the time out of your day. I appreciate it.
Oh, glad to do it, man. No worries.
Man, so where are you currently in Nashville right now?
Yes, yeah. Been living here for quite a while now. I lived in LA for 18 years and then got here about 12 years ago.
So not really jumping in here, just kind of small talk. What's the biggest difference between Nashville and LA because they're both big cities.
Yeah, I guess Nashville you still get four seasons here, LA, it was always you know, warm and pretty most of the time, but you had, a few cold spells here and there, but not much. But Nashville, you get snow, you get cold, you get the freezes. Yeah.
Dude, so I am in South Mississippi. I'm about 30 minutes out from the coast.
Yeah. I
And
grew up down there. Yeah.
what? Oh, okay. We're gonna talk about that. But what's funny is it was hot like 3 days ago. We get up Monday morning, and dude, it is like 40 degrees. Stays cold. All of a sudden, like there's supposed to be a spike in heat like next week, and I'm like, everybody is going to be so sick because
Right.
the temperature goes up and down. You're gonna be so sick with your sinuses.
Right. Oh
So
yeah.
so
Cool.
what so what is it in Nashville now? Is it cold, hot? What is it?
Yeah, it was below freezing last night, so I
Yeah.
went to the gym this morning, and I think it's 40 now. Yeah.
Do you take fitness pretty seriously?
Definitely. Yeah. It's a big part of my life. My, you know, mind, body, and spirit. I try to keep all three balanced and thriving.
When did you start to have you been working out your whole life, or kind of did that start when you
It
started?
kind of always, it began, even in high school in Moss Point, playing
Mm,
football and Coach Miller, all the workout plans. And when I moved to LA right out of high school, I always tried to stay and fit. I lived at the beach for a while, so I'd work out on the beach. Like I didn't have a gym membership, didn't have the money, so I'd just go out and find the pull-up bar, monkey bars, and just do push-ups on the beach, run, whatever
mm.
I could do to, stay in shape.
So you went to LA in high school. What was that? Where did you move there for?
I
What
moved
was the
there
reason?
after high school to
Okay.
chase music. Yeah, I knew that I had to go be a rock star, and LA was a place to
Okay.
be.
So
So,
so you weren't country music at that time. You wanted to be a
oh no,
rocker,
no, no.
a rock star.
Oh yeah, and I did it. Yeah, I was out
Okay.
there 18 years, three different record deals with Warner Brothers, MCA. I mean, so I did
Mhm.
it all, and I did session work with everyone from Gene Simmons of Kiss to just tons of different people. And then after I had kids, I decided to move closer to Mississippi, closer to family, but still be in the Music City, which was Nashville. Yeah.
Okay. So take me back, and we'll go full circle where we're at today. Where? What part of Mississippi did you grow up in?
So Moss Point, right
Oh
there on
wow. Okay. Pretty close. Okay.
the Moss Point High School. Yeah. Born in Mobile, but ended up like in Mississippi by the age of 3 or 4, and that's where I stayed till I was 18. Yeah.
Mhm. What what was the family dynamic like?
Well, it was all good. Growing up at that time was a little different. There was nobody knew what smoking was doing. I remember driving to the stores with my mom and stepdad, windows
Mm.
rolled up. They're both smoking cigarettes. Nobody's wearing seat belts, but we all turned out okay. You know, you know.
We may have a little cough here and there, but we're okay.
Well, we all survived it. It's just so
Yeah.
fun how we lived back then, drinking water out of the water hose, and
Hmm.
it was just a different life. But I loved it. It was great.
Playing in the red clay
Oh,
after it got finished raining, and you're sitting there in your underwear. You just sitting there playing in the clay.
yeah, nothing but good memories for sure. But
Yeah.
I knew that Hollywood was where
Mm.
Motley Crue and all the bands were getting signed, playing the Whiskey, the Roxy. So you know,
Yeah.
there's no internet to Google it. I just knew I had to buy a plane ticket and go, and that's what I did.
Okay, so before you go to LA, tell me when did you first hear music? Like when can you remember the first ever person or song you heard where you're like, okay, I have to do this for a living?
A great story. So as a kid, I always loved music. I got my first bass at the age of 12 because someone gave me a Kiss Alive 2 album.
Yeah, man.
I heard Gene Simmons just doing that, the slide and all the cool runs and all the songs. I'm like going, that's the stuff right there. Like, I want to do that.
Mm.
And so I started learning the bass and, teaching yourself. Back then there was no internet to Google it on YouTube. You just put your record player on and pick the needle up, picked it up until you found the notes. But that was a fun journey, and then years later, fast forward, I remember I was like 22, 23 in LA, and I became friends with Gene and was working with him whenever he was putting the original guys back together to do that Circus album, I
The
believe.
Psycho Circus.
Circus, yeah, I got it on my wall. So Psycho Circus, and he was like, hey, I'm writing some songs for Peter. So I got these 4 songs I want to go in the studio and record, but I don't want to play bass. I just want to kind of produce and think. He's like, will you come in and play bass with me? Like, dude, like, are you kidding me? I go, I used to dress up like you for Halloween every year. Now I'm getting to play bass on your song. I'm like, yeah. So interesting how life works, and how you manifest and think things, and it takes you there,
I grew up obviously in South Mississippi, but I grew up in a family that I say were 10 years in the past, right? Like they're 10 years behind, like just like I make the joke all the time on the podcast that my parents just realized that you can watch shows without them having to come on cable first. Like they can go to Netflix and like literally, like I grew up. And so I was born in 98,
yeah,
maybe 25, but I love the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s music, TV shows, movies, because that's how I was raised. I wasn't raised in the modern era of stuff. It was like, so like Kiss obviously is a big inspiration in my life. So was like Motley Crue and Aerosmith and I mean, geez, Guns N' Roses. And so I went and saw Kiss. On their final tour, they came to Biloxi. They came to the Coliseum, man. Yeah. And let me tell you something, dude. At 60, 70 years old, they still have it. And it was amazing to see because I'd never seen them before. And I wish if there was like a time machine I could hop in, I would go back to when the original Kiss was like just starting out, when they were at the Whiskey A Go Go, and they were oh man, I would just love to see the aerodynamics that the 4 could place into one.
Right.
And it's amazing what Paul and Gene want to do, or what they have done, what they want to do with Kiss is they're like, look, we want this to continue because there's just people in makeup. And they want it to go until, there's no longer need for Kiss. And I'm hoping that's what's going to happen after this final tour is where they're going to be like, it's the final tour for our Kiss. But the new Kiss is coming in, T minus however many years. And I think that's just something unique that hasn't happened in music ever.
No, completely. Yeah, I mean, Gene's a brilliant businessman to think of this model. And, I remember he and I at the Troubadour back in the 90s watching Tommy Thayer's Kiss tribute band at the Troubadour. And, and Tommy was playing Ace. And, like, Gene was like going, man, we've never sounded that good. Like, I mean, they were phenomenal.
Dude, so holy shit. So you were like really enthralled with Gene and Kiss, actually.
For a minute, like a few years, like we just had mutual friends. And so he had come up with this bass, like called the Punisher bass or something. And so Tommy at the time was just working for them, Tommy, who now is their guitar player. But he was in just a Kiss tribute band for years, having fun. But when the Punisher bass got created, they have a warehouse in North Hollywood, Kiss does, this big, huge warehouse where they keep all their freaking drums and amps and everything from every tour. It's massive. It's like a museum. So he would have these basses shipped over from Japan. And then me and Tommy and Kenny Queens, my great friend Kenny, who's from Biloxi, we would go through the basses, take the strings off, put GHS boomers on it because Gene had a GHS deal. And then Gene would come in the next day and he would sign them all day long and number them. And then we'd box them up, ship them off to Guitar Center. And this was like something we would do every couple of weeks. And so we became, semi-friends or whatever. As a young kid, it was just like, don't Gurmy, but, like, I'm going to ask him some questions periodically, and he loved it. He was always trying to give us information, and encourage us. If we had demos of our bands, he would tell us to bring them. He'd play them while we were working and give us nice critiques, encouragements. He would always, he was so funny. He'd always show up like in some Mercedes or something, but he would have fast food. Like he'd have bags of McDonald's or Jack in the Box for all of us. It's just so funny how he would buy the junkiest food, but show up in such a nice car,
It's like it's funny because it's kind of like the people that live in like a trashy trailer, but they have the nicest vehicles ever,
Right.
and you're like, why would you want that?
I'm like, gee, man, but we're 23. We'll eat anything. We're just glad to get a meal. But it was just so funny, like almost like it was the curtain being pulled back from this kid that grew up in Mississippi. And then at that point, I already had one record deal, but got dropped quickly. So I still was naive to a lot of it. And so all of a sudden, like this mega star is in your life and you're getting to like ask questions and pick his brain. And like, what a blessing that was, and I haven't talked to him in years and don't know if I ever get to again, but it was just such a wonderful treat for a young guy like myself, being close to your age now, to have that type of wisdom around me for a couple of years and a sounding board to ask questions and speak to and get encouragement from. So what a life,
So, it was crazy when I was watching Kiss. And I don't want to stay too long on the Kiss thing because
Sure,
I want to talk about. But it was very interesting because I'm the type of person to avoid any type of anxiety. I will go to YouTube and see if anybody has put up a full concert from the year or from that tour. So I can go listen to it from beginning to end, knowing they're probably going to change the set list, but so I can get an aspect of what's going to happen.
Right.
And as I watched it and realized and studying Kiss for years and years, they have a play. It is a play that they do. They're saying Gene is saying the same thing to Tommy. Tommy's saying the same thing to Paul. It's kind of like the Beach Boys. Mike's saying the same thing to Carl. Carl saying the same thing to Brian. And it's so brilliantly done that it's like you're not going to care. You're going to go to the next night. You're going to hear him say the same exact thing, but guess what? It's going to be just as better.
Yeah, it's a Broadway show on tour for life.
There you go.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's all scripted and planned out, but it's what we all want as an audience, like we all are moved by it, and it's so magical and superhero-esque, we all love it. So
how did you, so let's not, we'll get back to the Gene thing in a minute because I'm sure that's going to come up when you move to LA. So when you're 18, you move to LA, you want to be a rocker. What's the next step when you get to LA? What happens next?
Oh yeah, just trying to figure out, okay, how do I get from the airport to Hollywood? Like there's no Ubers or anything back then, So like I remember just being in the airport going, this is bigger than Moss Point, just the airport. Like I'm in trouble, just intimidated. Anyway, I finally find a bus that you could pay $2 on, takes you to Hollywood. And I found this hotel and then the journey began. The next day I went out, started looking, for an apartment because I had about $1,000 saved up, to go out there. And sure enough, on the second day, I found a studio apartment right behind Mann's Chinese Theater in Hollywood. It was $400 a month, and the bed came out of the door. It was one of those kind of things. It was a hot plate, a small fridge. I'm like, this is perfect. So yeah, and then on the next day, I had to find a job, and just my luck, right across the street from my apartment, I saw some musicians. I just started talking to these guys, and they go, "Hey, man, we work at this telemarketing place right here on the street. We just call and ask people to do movie surveys every afternoon. They're always looking for people. You should come by tomorrow and talk to our boss." And I did. I read the script as if I was on a call with someone, and they hired me, and that became my job. So I did that for like 6 months, and started looking for bands to audition or whatever. And that was my life.
So, and I want to know the kind of the backstory on this. So in Nashville, people will be out on the strip or somewhere with an acoustic guitar trying to get noticed by somebody. How is that? Does that happen in Los Angeles as well, or what's the difference in that?
So back, in LA, back in that time period, like in 88, 89, Music Connection magazine and it's still a magazine, but it was I think it came out every 2 weeks, and in the back of the magazine was basically free listings, bass player available, looking for blah blah blah, influences, Kiss, Motley Crue, Boston, blah blah blah. And you just list it and you put your number, and before you know it, you're all these other bands that are being assembled or are together that need a bass player for whatever reasons. They start calling you, and you start meeting with people. They bring you demos, and this goes on for a few weeks, and then finally, some band that had just got an independent record deal named Toy Rose. They reached out to me. Their bass player, after recording their record, I don't know, I think he probably has some type of drug issue or something, and they wanted to get rid of that. And so here I am, this 18-year-old naive kid just looking to be a rock star. I was perfect. They didn't have to pay me much money. We're going to make you a star. We're going to go on tour in 3 months. Boom. And I'm like, yes, sign me up. Right. So the next thing you know, within a year of being there, I'm at photo shoots with Niels Lozauer, who's the photographer for Guns N' Roses, Motley Crue, Poison, everybody. And next couple weeks after that, I'm in Rip magazine, Metal Edge magazines, everything. So wow, I'm living my dream, I think, in my head, And then we got on tour, and it's exciting year of my life, but it was in a van. It wasn't on a bus. But I still had a blast and got to travel the country and get experience. And from that, after that year was over, the label let the band go, didn't do another record. And I got back to Hollywood, had to find another job, had to get back, at it again. And so the journey began all over. But that year was magical of getting out, living that life, and just playing, different cities around every night, and just learning what it's like to be in a band, what it's like to break down, what it's like to have no one show up to the show, all those things that you have to experience in this life. Lots of that happened within that 12-14 month period.
That's kind of interesting that they found you kind of like the way Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee found Mick Mars and Motley Crue, was kind of
Right.
They just put an ad out for a guitar player and you had to shred. So, so you kind of, I'm not going to say blew up, but you found a little bit of success within the first year, within your first year, which doesn't really happen that much.
In the music industry is, I was driven and I was determined, but I thank God I was naive enough to not know how hard it was. I just knew that this was what I had to do, and I didn't realize what the odds were. And when I got there, I'm a very strong, faith, positive type of person. I had no furniture, no nothing. All I had was that suitcase, my guitar, my bass guitar, and I had a notepad and pen and my Bible. And I started just writing, scriptures and positive things and taping them to the walls, bathroom. So I had to fill my brain with no doubt, but nothing but reinforcement that this was going to work out. If I was brushing my teeth, there was a scripture going, if God before you, I was just feeding my spirit, my soul. And so, there's magic in that, because your thoughts truly are where, a magnet. And so I basically at a young age learned how to manifest and attract opportunities to me, even though I wasn't the best bass player, wasn't the best background singer, whatever. I didn't have the longest hair. There was plenty of reasons why someone else could have got that gig. But I think my determination and my mindset allowed me a lot of opportunities, that talent won't always get you,
So after that first year, the band is kaput because they're not going to re-sign them. So they're like, okay,
so these guys are older than me, and
right. So what happens after that? So what's your next?
So I'm back in Hollywood.
Right.
I go down. I'm back living right off Hollywood Boulevard, actually, again. And I see a new clothing shop opening up called Black's Clothing. So I go in, introduce myself, and Sure enough, the guy calls me a few days later and offers me a job. So I start working there for, gosh, next year or so. And I'm just trying to find my next gig. My drummer from Toy Rose, his best friend from Virginia had just got a record deal with MCA, and same thing, bass player, for whatever reasons, they have a fallout, and then I get the call for that. So I joined Dead, White, and Blue, who's on MCA, and start working with that band for the next couple of years. So again, opportunity kind of fell into my lap by just knowing the right people or whatever it was. And then when that band fell apart, one of the biggest signings since Van Halen was a band called Life, Sex, and Death. They got signed to Warner Brothers in 1992, and there was 10 labels bidding over them. And I remember seeing them at the Whiskey going, man, this band's incredible. Oh my God, I would do anything to play with this band. Well, sure enough, they go out on tour in support of their first album. Bass player meets some girl in North Carolina, falls in love, and decides he wants to come off the road and move there and get married. So here it is. LSD, Life, Sex, and Death, is having this massive audition looking for a bass player. Everyone's auditioning from New York, LA, Seattle, blah, blah, blah. So long story short, when Dead, White, and Blue got dropped from MCA, we did a couple of showcases for some labels. Warner Brothers comes to the show, passes on the band, but Barry Squire, the A&R guy, for whatever reason, I guess he was impressed with me. And so another friend working at Warner Brothers was at the coffee machine, sees Barry, and she goes, Barry, how's the auditions for LSD going? He goes, oh, they're going, there's every 15 minutes, every day. They have bass players lined up in the hall, and they're bringing them in. They're on like 300th bass player they're audition, but Stanley, the singer, is having a hard time finding someone. But I think I know a guy that would be perfect, but I don't know how to get in touch with him. And he used to play with a band called Dead, White, and Blue. And my friend Jennifer goes, oh my God, that's Robby Wilson. I got his number right here. So let's call him. So they call me, go, hey, would you be interested in audition for Life, Sex, and Death? I'm like, of course I would. They go, hey, come to Warner Brothers. We'll give you the album and we can set up an audition for tomorrow. I go, man, I've already got the album. I'm a fan. I go, I can audition today. Like, tell me what songs to learn, and I'm there. And so sure enough, I went there that night at 9:30 and auditioned. And 2 weeks later, they called me and told me I was their guy. But they had auditioned 350 bass players. So yeah, it was crazy. And so that became my gig for the next couple of years, working on that second album and all those things. And that was a process. During, when that finally ends, I'm exhausted. I'm like going, okay, I've been signed and dropped 3 times and this and that. Like I need to figure out what's next and not rush, And interesting enough, another friend of mine was working in TV and film on a #1 Nickelodeon show and said, hey man, well, if you're looking for work.
Who was that?
So the show was called The Secret World of Alex Mack.
Okay.
And the friend of mine was named Chris Barber. He was the head carpenter for this show. And so we let him know. I was like, yeah, I'm looking for work. LSD got dropped. I'm not getting paychecks from Warner Brothers anymore. And sure enough, he goes, well, hey, we need extra people here and there. He brought me in for a day of work and I loved it. And it's great money, like incredible money. I think I made more in one day doing that than in my weekly small salary from Warner Brothers every week, And anyway, that finally turns into come back next week. And then when the next season rolled around, they offered me a full-time job to be a set carpenter. And I took that, and I didn't quit music, but I just took a pause of trying to figure out what's next, but let me make a living and not be stressed about money. And it was nice to have a real job, being creative, having fun, and making money where you could afford to eat out, pay your bills, and not stress,
So did you build any type of sets from TV shows that we would know?
So yeah, so after The Secret World of Alex Mack, which was the #1 show on Nickelodeon all through the 90s, after that ended, I went on to work for The Man Show, which starred Jimmy Fallon, I think. Oh, Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel.
Jimmy Kimmel.
So he was the host of that. I think that was on Comedy Central or whatever. So I worked on that for several years. And then as we're growing up, I get married. My wife and I have our first child. And next thing you know, 14 months later, she's pregnant again with our second child. We're like going, okay, LA's been good, but maybe we should get, raise them somewhere else. So I started considering like, well, do I move back to Mississippi or what do I do? And so I flew out to Nashville for a week by myself, checking it out. I had a couple of friends here, showed me around, and I loved it. And it's only 6.5 hour drive from the coast. My wife was from Virginia, so it's only 7 hour drive for her to her family. So it seemed like the perfect spot. And so the plan was put in place. Hey, let's get to Nashville. And then that's how that happened. And that's
okay. What year was that you moved to Nashville?
2000, so that's like 2005 or 6, I guess, something like that. Yeah, the kids were young. And we get here and instantly I'm like, okay, well, let me see if I can reinvent myself and see what's next. Like maybe I'm just gonna get into producing and writing, and maybe I'm not gonna tour anymore, but everyone, I guess, at that time in the early 2000s, Jason Aldean was getting signed and all this movement was happening where country artists were looking at their bands to look like rockers, So
the times were changing. Yes.
And so all these people kept like going, hey man, you should play bass with so-and-so. They need a bass player. And I can sing high harmony. So opportunities, my phone started ringing. I started filling in for different artists and working with different people. My buddy Kip Moore had just moved to Nashville at the same time I did. We started writing songs together. And then opportunities came up. A band that Tim McGraw just signed called Halfway to Hazard needed a bass player. And they were kind of a edgy, rockin' country duo. I jumped on that and did that for a couple of years. And then from there, the phone kept, that tour ended and that record deal was done. Keith Anderson was hitting pretty hard, who's one of my best friends. And
really? Okay. He's one of my best friends, man. I had him on the podcast a couple years ago, and we like hit it off. And so sweet guy. He talked about you on the podcast, and that was the first where I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that they got a new, like a Lonestar crew. I knew they got a new, they got new band members together. And yeah, so he was the one that actually told me about you, and that's why you're on the show. So Keith's a very sweet guy.
So one of my best friends. So as a Halfway to Hazard is done, Keith is still pretty happening. And he needed a bass player, and he's like, call me up, goes, hey man, you want to come do some summer dates with me? And that turned into like 2 or 3 years of sticking with Keith. And, and he and I both had the same passion for fitness and health. And so we would take our mountain bikes out on tour with us. So every day when we get to the hotel, we'd have a runner pick us up with a truck or a van, put our mountain bikes in the back of the truck and take us to trails, drop us off, come back 4 hours later and pick us up, So we did that all over Oregon, Utah, New Mexico, California. I mean, we found some amazing places. And then, just the stops that we would take for breaks and the conversations that you have out there, just amazing memories. And I love Keith so much. What a great guy.
Yeah, and so obviously you moved to LA to be a rock star.
Sure.
But you grew up in Mississippi, so there had to be some country music involved, right?
That's the thing. And I guess the thing is I've always just loved good music.
Yes, right.
And, I even growing up, my first concert with my mom was seeing Conway Twitty, and he was incredible, what a voice. So I've loved anything good my whole life, but as a kid, the power of Kiss, Van Halen, all that stuff just really gets inside you and makes you want to be a superstar like that,
Well, it made you feel, and I'll say this, because growing up, I was not allowed to listen to any of that stuff because my mom considered it devil music. But when you listen to it, you feel like an outlaw. You feel like You know what I mean? It's just like you feel like you're defying all the rules that you're not supposed to.
It's just crazy. It's
Like
such
it's
a
illegal, you know?
yeah, and the adrenaline rush, and it's like a dopamine release that you get from that type of music. It's just as a kid, that's what you want to do. So, like you're right, but as I grew up, also I'm in my early 30s. I'm in Nashville. I'm like, man, Keith's stuff could have easily been recorded by
Easily.
by a rock band of the 80s. Like it's music was changing, country music was changing. And so like I found my place here. And so when the Keith thing, when he's kind of started slowing down and taking some time off, crazy enough, another friend of mine called me asking if I would fill in, do one show with Lonestar because their bass player was thinking of leaving, coming off the road. They needed someone that could sing high harmony, do it. And I said no for like 2 weeks, and finally like going, man, we really could use you. And I finally agreed. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna learn all these songs. There's no rehearsal. They send me a board mix, like going, this is our show, learn it, learn your harmonies, learn the lyrics. So I grinded for 2 weeks still, just learning these songs, learning how to play them and sing them, the words. And I get on the bus with these guys, go to Canada, and we play for the first time in front of 10,000 people. I'm scared out of I'm nervous. I'm like, God, please, God, please, God, please help me get through this. But it went great. And, after the show was done, they're like, man, this is the best we've sounded in forever. Like, thank you so much for doing this. And sure enough, like a month later, they called me and said, hey, if you want it, the gig, we'd love to have you. The bass player did decide to move to San Francisco and take his church gig at being a lead worship minister there. And we'd love to have you. We're not going to do auditions if you want it. I'm like, all right, I'm in. So that, hey, 13 years later, here I am playing with Lonestar still, all from filling in for one gig. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been with Lonestar for, you said, a little over 13 years? Was
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
So you were, was Richie still a part of the
Yeah.
band at that time?
Yeah. So Richie just left a couple years ago after COVID hit. We kind of thought maybe we're done.
Mm-hmm.
And, and Richie's kind of like going, it's kind of nice being home, this and that. And he's always had a side project with the front men, which is these other lead singers from other country groups, and they do gigs when they could. And so after COVID, I think everyone's had thoughts of like, what's next? And then he decided, I could probably work less if I don't stay with Lonestar and, pick and choose the dates and let them just go on and continue if they want to. And, the guys, Dean Sams is the founding member. He decided to reach out to a couple of friends of his that would be good singers for the group. And so he reached out to Drew Womack, who his band was signed in the 90s as well in Nashville called Sons of the Desert. And they had 3 or 4 hits, and then, things fell apart. And then Drew went on to become a big songwriter and had number ones he written for Kenny Chesney and other people. And he moved back to Austin and was just living his life, doing background vocals for people and writing songs. And so anyway, Dean talked to him. He's like going, yeah, man, if you guys need someone to fill in to be your singer, for some gigs, I'll be glad to do it, And he goes, wait, actually, like, if you need a singer, I could just be your singer. And so Drew's been phenomenal. He's a sweet, sweet guy, great singer, and still loves touring because he didn't do it for so long. So he, unlike Richie, who's done it so many years, is exhausted. Drew had taken a 20-year break from it. So he decided to be out working again. And so it's been great to have Drew help us keep sharing those hits. And sweet, sweet soul, brings a great energy to the band. Just things, it's interesting how life unfolds and how pieces all kind of fall into place,
Let me ask you this. And because you were a part of, and we'll bring Kiss back into this because it kind of happened the same way with Kiss, was
Right.
they had 2 of the original founding members, and then they added 2 new ones when the originals left. Now with Lonestar, Richie's left, who was the voice, right? He was the one that you didn't. And I'll say this, and maybe I'm wrong when I say this. you may not have realized if the drummer had left or if the bassist or guitarist had left, but you would know if the singer, if Richie had left,
Completely.
because they have a different sound now. So was there, and I'm sure there probably was in some sense, but was there ever any backlash with the Lone Star fans where they're like, "Oh, I'm not doing this because the guy that we love is gone"? Because at one point, I know Richie left and then came back again.
Yeah, he came back for like 5 years, and he's like, okay, that was fun. And then COVID hit, and he's like, yeah, it's kind of nice being home again.
Yeah. So what was that like having a new full time singer? Seeing it from the band's perspective as if, oh man, are these fans gonna like it?
Yeah, exactly. And it, it happened to so many people. So we worried about that too. But man, truth be told, a handful of or I'm sorry, fans would email and go, hey, I hate this. And then the response would be like, well, please understand, no one asked Richie to leave. He volunteered to leave on his own. So
Right.
he didn't get fired or pushed out. We never would have asked him to leave, but we still love playing these songs and these hits. So please come see a show. We'll even give you tickets. If you don't like it, don't come back. And so quickly fans were like, you know what? You sound phenomenal. It's a more energetic show than I've ever seen. Um, and I promise you, like Lonestar as a band, as a business, made more last year than it's made in the past 15 years. It was our
Really?
highest grossing touring year. So the fans, it's interesting how 90s country is so big now. And a lot of these people coming to the show are in their 20s and don't even know what any of the members look like because they just are kids that grew up hearing the songs from their parents.
Right.
So they had no clue who Richie was, who Drew is, they just know Lone Star, the brand, the band name, and the songs. And so it's interesting how now we're at that point which is like Styx or REO Speedwagon or Foreigner, like, maybe not all original guys anymore, but the product is still amazing and the songs are still being delivered and people are showing up. So we're
Because
great.
I think it would be a whole different story if it was all new band and it was
Right.
all new sound and they didn't play the classic hits and like we're gonna take those out because now we're new. You know what I mean? And so I think it would be a total different. It would be a mind screw to some fans if it was like, well, wait a minute, there was a band in the Lone Star in the 90s and 2000s,
Right.
and this is they're playing the same type of music, but they just don't play in the old stuff, which
Yeah.
which I've been to a concert before to a band which is going to remain unnamed, and they didn't play none of their hits. They played all new stuff, and I'm like, what is happening? Like it was like this is the most boring 90 minutes of my life. I could have stayed home and listened to the new album on the radio.
Is, like there comes a point in every band and artist career where eventually your catalog is what everyone is just wanting to hear. And that's what you give them. That's their escape back. That's those timestamps to remind them of their wedding song when you play Amazed or Already There, whatever. It's amazing how those songs will take people to a place. And that's what you got to do every night. And that's what we continue to do. It's nothing but hits. The whole 90-minute show is 10 number ones and, 8 or 10 top fives,
So where do you guys place like a slow song like Amazed or I'm Already There into the set? Because I imagine you can't close with it and you can't open with it. So kind of where does that fall?
So Already There comes about 3/4, about 60 minutes into the show. We do a 90-minute show. So it's, we've already hit you with at least 6 or 7 number ones and a few other songs. And then Already There happens, about an hour into it. And it's a great spot for it because people have been smiling, they've been dancing. And this, that song's emotional for a lot of people. Every night, Drew and the band dedicate that song to our troops because, after 9/11, all the troops kind of adapted that song as their unofficial anthem and their cry to home. And so we dedicate it to the men and women of service. And there's a lot of people that are there that have lost loved ones, and or even people have loved ones still stationed and they're on FaceTime showing the song, and they get us on FaceTime. So you see the tears, you see the, it's painful, but it's healing. It does what it's supposed to do. And then we pick them back up with, with Memphis and kind of change you back. And then Amazed is right at the end of the show. But then we don't close with it. We do
Right.
No News, which was a big #1 for Lonestar as well. And then we walk off stage with that big energetic song, and then come back with a rock encore. We always do a rock encore, by the way. Yeah.
What's your favorite song to play live?
Well, gosh, I love playing. Let's see. I guess What About Now was a big fun one. It was a #1. It's energetic, and it's always a great one because the crowd half the time sings louder than we sing, so we can almost stop singing, if we want to. So that's always a fun one. And then I guess the rock encore, since I'm a rocker, that 12-minute encore is a medley of all these great rock songs, and the crowd goes crazy. And that's me being 18, 19 again for 12 minutes. So I love that. So
Yeah. Do you know what Lone Star song that I forget about, but when I hear it, I'm like, that is the jam. That is that Mr. Mom.
right, and that's a big one.
I forget about it, and because that was I think that may have been the first song I heard of Lone Star, just because I was 5 or 6 when it had come out.
Let me tell you this.
Yeah.
When I first joined the band, we didn't even play it because the guys, they were like, man, we can't play that song. It's so cheesy. They almost regretted that they recorded it, but it was a huge #1 for them. But it's one of those songs you're going, man, it kind of, we don't want to be that kind of band. And then finally everyone's going, no, people love it. Let's embrace it, and not hide from it. Let's give it to them. And we do. And it's always one of the biggest moments of the show every night. But it's almost like how Billy Ray Cyrus and Achy Breaky Heart, it changed his life, but it also kind of like you go, oh man, I'm almost embarrassed that I wrote that. Or
and I've never understood that. I guess because I'm not in that light, so I guess I don't really understand. But it's like when Brooks and Dunn, when they go, the song I hate playing the most is Boot Scoot Boogie, and it's like, what? Like, why though? Like, that's what puts you on the. It's like people, like actors, like Alfonso Ribeiro. He will not answer any questions related to Carlton, and I'm like, but dude, you've had no other success other than Carlton, so what are you supposed to ask?
Exactly. So yeah, I think it was just the weirdness in everyone's heads. And then a few years ago, we're like, let's get it back in the show. And we're so glad we did, because what a great big #1 that was for Lone Star. And why try to act like it didn't happen? Now we just embrace it and enjoy it and let the silliness of the song be silly. We just have fun with it,
On this current set list, what do you guys open up the show with?
Let's see. We walk out, and Coming Home is the first song.
Wow. Okay. I wouldn't expect that.
Yeah, it was energetic. It's good. It wasn't a #1. It was a top 10. So everyone knows it, but we don't open with a #1. We get into that song 3 or 4.
You make them wait. And that's what I love about the Amazed and the I'm Already There, is you make them wait, because that's one of the 5 or the 6 that they're there to hear.
Oh my goodness.
And so it's like, if they hear that first or second and you go, okay, I'm going home. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to go home. So you have to make them wait. Right. Anticipation.
Completely. Yeah. So it's a great bunch of guys. We have a blast, and we leave again tomorrow to head somewhere in Kansas, I think. Yeah.
Nice. So, man, look, this is part of the show where I want to just pick your brain for a bit. I want to ask you some questions, and you just tell me the first thing that pops in your head.
Uh-oh. All right, let's do it.
I used to do them rapid fire, but I just couldn't think of them quick enough.
I'm going to be a slow responder. Don't worry.
So what was the first concert that you went to? Maybe you were just such a big fan that made you so emotional.
Okay, so I mentioned that my first concert was Conway Twitty as a 12-year-old, but the artist that really I was always and still a huge fan of was Prince. And so when I finally got to see Prince live, I mean, that was life-changing, emotionally, like just touched my soul. Like, man, like what a talent, what a rare oddity he is to walk this earth amongst us. and get to see he could pick up every instrument from everybody on the stage and play it better than they were. And these were all excellent musicians.
Yep.
He only hired the best. So yeah, Prince. I'll give you that.
Dude, for me, it was at first it was Kiss because my favorite Kiss song is Beth, and when they played it, it was just like, oh, you never thought you'd hear it. And
Right.
then a couple weeks, beginning of October, this past month, I went and watched the Beach Boys perform.
Mm.
Man, let me tell you something. They busted out to God Only Knows. I was in that place weeping like a
Oh,
child, man. It was just like because it's probably like Prince for you. You're watching this living legend that's not
yeah.
going to be here very much
Right.
longer,
Right.
and it's like just watching Mike Love and Brian just have that chemistry, and they're singing, and you just like, man, it's you never thought you would be here at this point because you just
Yeah.
because for me, my music, like Elvis is my biggest musical inspiration.
Same here.
Comes to the love of my grandma.
Yeah.
My grandma introduced me to Elvis, the Beach Boys, Conway Twitty, just Willie
Yeah.
Nelson. And so when I hear those, my grandma's still alive, but it's like you just can't help but feel the emotion when you hear those because it's like I remember her telling me this is popular when I was growing up, and I want you to listen to it. You know,
What a good grandmother she is. Yeah.
very, very so. What's the last book you read?
Let's see. Actually, a Joel Osteen book. I'm in
Okay.
the middle of, as he's such a positive thinker, and greater things are coming, I believe is the title of it. And I just love feeding my soul with positive words, and not
So,
anything.
so do you go so let's just say when you go to Barnes and Noble or something to pick up a book, are you going to a certain section first? Because, like, for me, and I'll explain, give an example. I feel every time I read a book, I have to read a nonfiction, a history, or a memoir because I feel, which is stupid of me to feel this way, but I feel if I read, I must learn something.
Yeah.
Like I can't read a fiction book because I'm like I'm wasting time. I can watch a movie if I'm going to do that. You know.
Right.
So what is it for you? Or
I love that.
you're just a mixture?
No, no, no. I'm seem like I always go to the mindset section. I'm always trying to
Mm.
keep, my spirit, my mind full of thinking the right things. And I'm kind of not infatuated with it, but I'm like intrigued by like the power of thoughts and
Mm.
our words, and our words have power. And so the older I get, the more I've been allowed to see how that really works. And I guess it's like once you got that fish on the line, you just want to keep reeling it in. So I
Mhm.
kind of end up in that section. Yeah. I'm always trying to learn and challenge myself to a new way of thinking in a productive way.
What's like a classic movie or a movie everybody's like that's one of the greatest movies of all time that you just never seen and don't care to watch it?
Oh my goodness. Let's
For me,
see.
it's The Godfather. I've never seen The Godfather. I don't plan on
Okay.
it because everybody talks about it.
Okay. Yeah, I never seen The Godfather either. And I never seen Martin Scorsese. Everyone raves, he's wonderful, but I never saw Taxi Driver or
Let me tell
yeah.
you something. Let me tell you something about Taxi Driver.
Okay. I never seen
I
it.
I watched it not be just because like there was no reason behind it. But dude, that is a movie where nothing happens.
Okay.
Like like I'm watching it and I go, what is the point of this movie? Like he's a
Right.
taxi driver, he goes crazy, but there's really no point in him. Why does he go crazy? Like there's no, and I'm like, I don't understand the hype about this movie. He
I'm
shaves
glad I
his
didn't
head.
watch it.
It's literally, and people go, that's one of the greatest movies of all time, and I'm like, if you
Okay.
like okay, sure.
Sure. Okay.
What
All
favorite album of all time? If you are stranded on a desert island and there's only one album you can bring, what's that album you're bringing?
Well, I have to bring probably Stevie Wonder, "Songs in the Key of Life."
Mm,
Stevie, man, goodness
shoot, man.
gracious, come
Make
on,
you yeah, that's make you emotional, huh? Just
good. What a monster of a talent. Goodness. So,
we're gonna go a little dark here for this question. You get hit by a bus, you're lying on the street, and you only have time to sing one song. What's that song you're gonna sing? That's gonna describe your life.
oh my goodness. I guess Frank Sinatra, "My Way."
Hey, speaking of Frank Sinatra, are you familiar with like what a Mandela effect is?
Tell me, okay. Tell
So
me about
basically, a Mandela effect that comes from, and I only know this because I just did research on it
it.
because I'm like,
Okay.
I don't know what that is.
I've heard of it.
Yeah.
I
So
can't. I know.
it's kind of like you remember something being one way, and then it's actually like, for example, like the Berenstain Bears. Like it's people thought it was AIN, and then apparently it's always been EIN. I don't know, but
Okay.
there is now this. Let me pull up the lyrics to this song, and I want to ask you. So Frank Sinatra, everybody's covered the song "I'll Be Home for Christmas."
Yeah.
Okay, I want you to finish this lyric for me, and
Oh God.
you tell me if you remembered it this way. So it goes, "I'll be home for Christmas. You can blank on me."
Well, okay. So you can count on me,
Okay,
right?
no, it's not. It has never
No.
been. It has never been count on me. It has always been you can plan on me.
Wow.
And I'm like, there's no way it used to be plan on me because. But I wonder if it's like one of those where it was like the Yanny and Laura thing, if it's like an earworm or an ear trick that's like maybe
Sure.
you're hearing something different. But I'm like, I've heard every version of that song, and they always say you can count.
Oh, I know. Yeah, completely. I think I've always heard that one. Now I've got to go listen to it when we're done.
I did the same thing. I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to each person that I know that covered this, and I'm gonna listen to, and they all go plan on me, and I go, there's no
Oh,
way, there is no way.
well, thanks for ruining my Christmas song.
Is that so? We are coming close on Christmas. Do you think it's November 1st when we're recording this? Do
Yeah.
you think it's too early to put a Christmas tree up today and listen to Christmas music? What is your
Well,
stance on that?
I have no judgment, but here's what I do. I do it the day after Thanksgiving.
Okay, that's yeah.
I don't rush it. I like it to be special, but you can't overdo it or you take away the magic of it all.
See, here's where I am. I'm not gonna. You could have told me no. You can put it up on February 8th. Fine with me. I'm not. I can't judge
Yeah.
you, right? Because I do things that you don't like.
Right.
But my thing is, I'm not the old grandpa saying don't rush these holidays. These holidays, but it's kind of like Christmas. Anything gets old fast.
Yeah.
Like
Quick.
Christmas songs, Christmas movies. I can't watch them from November 1st and go all the way to December 5th because you would just grow tired of it. And so
Yeah.
that's where it comes in, where it's like my brother is probably down at his house right now putting up Christmas because it's his favorite holiday.
Right.
Perfect. But it's like I am with you. I'm either I could do the second or third week of November. It doesn't have to wait till after
Sure.
no, Thanksgiving, but I'm right there with you. It's like,
Yeah.
or at least on Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving,
Sure.
sure. Start the music, start the Bing Crosby.
Do it.
Here we go. Let's do it.
Yeah. I just don't want to wear it out because then I think you're
That's
going to
it.
take the
That's
magic away.
so. Do you get stressed out during like Christmas shopping?
Oh, goodness. Thank God for Amazon. That's all I can say.
Yeah. But see, even that gives me anxiety because it's like because I have a 4-year-old nephew and a 4 and a 2-year-old nephew who the 4-year-old's autistic, and then I have a 1-year-old niece, and everybody they're so spoiled, Robbie. They are so
Okay.
spoiled. I'm telling you because they get everything that they could possibly want from their parents, my parents, and it's the anxiety of are they going to enjoy this? Are they going to get 3 of these?
Uh-huh.
It's that anxiety of I want to find because gift giving is is my thing. Like I love to give
Love it.
gifts.
Yeah.
I don't really like receiving them that much.
Yeah. I
Like
don't need a gift. Yeah.
it's like a birthday party. I don't really like that. Like if you tell me happy birthday, thanks. I guess now go on about a day. It's just a normal day.
Yeah.
But when it's your birthday or your thing or your birthday party, it's like let's go.
Yeah.
Let's get it. And so I find extreme anxiety in Christmas. And so I'm just like, I'm going to pop a couple of Xanaxes going Black Friday
You got
shopping.
this. Right.
I like going and watching the fights at Black Friday because I'm like, man, that is a $12 toaster. If you wait in the morning, you can get that toaster for $8.50.
Exactly.
Or I can wait 2 weeks and pay 24 for it. I didn't get a black
Yeah,
eye
either way.
for it. I don't have to pay bail money. So,
Exactly. Right. You're a smart man. Yeah.
last question for you, Robbie. And this is last two couple questions for you.
Sure.
And this one is probably the most important. And what's one word to describe you that you describe yourself as?
Man, I guess you would say driven.
Okay,
Uh,
why you're driven?
I love life. I love the excitement of tackling the impossible,
Mhm.
and chasing music is one of the most challenging but rewarding journeys I could have ever chosen. Because if you want to be a lawyer, a nurse, there's a plan in place. There's a school to go to. There's a degree plan. There's an academic advisors. There's classes you take, you pass, you do. If you want to make it in music, there's no two people that do it the same way, and there's no plan. There's no guarantee. There's just you in this journey and this hope and this dream, and that goodness gracious, you better be driven and you better have thick skin, and I've just what a life though that I've been afforded by being this type of person that I am, and
You
going
know,
after impossible.
Robbie, I've never understood people that, and I'm sure everybody knows people like this, where they're like, I want to be successful, I want to do this and this, but they lay in bed all day, they go to work and come home, and they don't, you know what I mean? They don't put in, because I'm a journalist, I write for my hometown newspaper here, and
Nice.
I'm working 80 hours a week. Like
Yeah,
I've go because it's such a small town, and we are so understaffed. Like there's four
sure.
people writing a 20-page paper.
Goodness.
It's ridiculous. And so I'm working 80 hours, but I want to do the podcast. I want to be successful in my own way. And it's like I have to get up. There's some nights where I sleep 2 hours
Yeah.
because I'm doing this. And it's like, but I wouldn't want it any other way. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
What a
And it's
what a journey. Yeah.
and I've never understood people that are just like, I just too tired to do it, or I can't do it. No, you can do it. You just don't want to find the time
Right.
to do it.
Yeah. Discipline's everything. You know,
Yeah.
it really is. And if you
It
take,
took me a long time to it took me a long time to become disciplined. And I'm sure
yeah,
took me a long time to be disciplined.
that's all right. But you figured it out at a young age. So look at what great things lie ahead because you have figured that out.
Yeah. That's what I've been told that numerous times. It's like you're 25 and you're already disciplined. Like you're already set.
Dylan, look at the amount of podcasts you've already
I've
recorded.
dude, I've done a lot.
Goodness gracious.
I've
I
done
was
a lot.
blown away listening to some of the archive. I'm like, goodness,
Oh.
there's
Well, I appreciate you listening. I appreciate that.
it's wonderful. You do a great job at it. So I'm grateful that you found me and reached out. I love chatting with you.
Yeah, man. So last question, and this is going to be a two-parter. I'm sure you've done numerous interviews throughout your career. What's one question that you always get, knowing you know you're going to be asked about it, or know you're going to be you're going to have to talk about this, that you know you're going to have to talk about it?
I guess one question sometimes people would ask is if you could change anything, what would you change? And I guess my answer is always nothing because every setback was a setup, every failure was a learning experience, every celebration was just a small moment to breathe and smile. But then you don't stay on that pile of whatever it is too long either. Like you have to just keep moving. So I have no regrets. And people ask, oh, what would you change? Like, I feel like everything had its purpose if you allow it. Every failure will be a magical part of your journey if you allow it to be. And so yeah, I guess that one's always like, oh man, I wouldn't change a thing.
Second part of the question. What's one thing you know you're never going to get asked, or you never get allowed to talk about there? You're just like, I wish they would ask me this, or let me talk about this today.
Oh goodness. All right. I gotta dig deep for that. I guess um some people in this day and age are afraid to ask of your faith or of your beliefs, things like that. And so I always enjoy when I do have a chance to share, that I know God's blessed me with what I have and what I get to do and what I still have ahead of me. And I always tell everyone I wouldn't be where I am or have been able to do what I've done without faith and without blessings. And so I guess this day and age, people are, whether you agree or not, it's okay to ask people. At least it is to me. But what a time we live in now, where you can't ask people a lot of things because you might offend them or offend someone, and I hate that. Yeah.
You know, I was in that same boat that happened a couple years ago when the podcast really took off during COVID. So COVID was a great year for me. So as bad as it was for others, it was a great year for me because
Right.
everybody just was home. And so I got numerous people that I never would have gotten if COVID didn't happen on the show. And I had a rock star on here. I'm gonna keep it nameless because I took it. I took it. I'll tell you later if you want to know. But I took it all out of the podcast because he just like would belittled me because
Oh,
I never prepare questions. I never know the route I'm gonna take.
yeah.
So I always usually start the podcast out with like, hey, I'm going to ask questions. I don't know anything. So if I offend you, please don't take no offense to it. Just let me know. Say you don't want to answer. And he was talking about going on tour with these massive, massive bands like
Okay.
Aerosmith and all this stuff. And I was like, man, what was the drug use like back in the day? And I guess I had asked it in a way where I assumed that he or his band was on
Sure.
drugs, which was true. He was on drugs. It's known. But he was like, man, that's just a terrible question for you to ask me. And now I regret ever coming on your show. And I'm this and I'm that. And I was like, bro,
Whoa.
but you talked about it like 3 weeks ago in like Esquire magazine or something. Like,
Yeah.
calm down, dude.
Oh my goodness. That's fun.
It's very fun.
You push the buttons, man. Good for you.
Dude, I had to stop for a while because my hero's Howard Stern.
Sure.
And I did Howard Stern-esque interviews, and I've made so many people mad. And that was my first ever year doing podcasts. Was like I have to do it like Howard Stern, and I got bad words. Like people were like, "Don't go to his show. He's gonna do this, and he's gonna."
Oh,
And so I had to stop it, and then I had to reinvent myself, and be like,
sure.
"Look, that was a bad time in my life." So I try to watch it, but
I love Howard
Robby,
Stern, though. Yeah.
Robby, I appreciate it. I thank you
Man,
very much.
we had a great talk. It's so good to meet you and get to talk with you, buddy.
You too, man. If you guys are ever down in Mississippi, let
I'm
me
gonna keep
know, man.
posted. We
Let me
usually
know, man.
do. We'll get down to Biloxi. I bet you we'll get down there next year because we didn't do that area this year. So usually every other year we make our way
Sure.
back to the coast.
Let me know, dude. I will come and I will get a ticket and I will come
I don't
hang
know.
out
I
with you
got
guys.
you. We'll break bread, have some lunch, and I'll get you tickets and take care of you, my friend.
I appreciate it, man. We'll get you back on here in the next. If you come back next year, we'll do a live podcast.
We'll do it. I'm sure I have more things to chat about. Always, it's nonstop over here. Yeah.
Appreciate it, Robby. Look, man, this podcast is going to go up next week. I will tag you on all the socials and I will email
Awesome.
it over to you. I appreciate it, man.
All right, Dylan. Be good, brother.
You too,
Take
man.
care.
Have a good one.
Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.